The first explosion threw the private jet's rear door 30 feet across the runway. People screamed and ran backward as flames swallowed the silver aircraft like a living monster. Fuel poured across the concrete in burning rivers. Security guards shouted for everyone to stay away. The heat alone felt strong enough to melt skin. But one man ran toward it. Ethan Cole ignored the guards grabbing at his jacket. Ignored the second explosion that cracked through the night sky like thunder. Ignored the fact that everyone else was running for their lives. Because inside that burning jet was the billionaire who had destroyed his life 3 months earlier. And somehow, Ethan couldn't leave him there to die. "Sir, you can't go in there!" a firefighter yelled. Ethan shoved past him anyway. The fire roared louder as he approached the aircraft. Smoke clawed into his lungs. His eyes watered instantly. The metal stairs had already partially collapsed, hanging crooked beneath the open cabin door. Another explosion shook the runway. Someone in the crowd screamed, "It's going to blow!" Ethan knew that. But he also knew something else. A little girl was watching from behind the barricades. His daughter Lily. And if he walked away while someone burned alive in front of him, she would never see the same father again. So Ethan climbed. The heat became unbearable halfway up the stairs. Flames burst through one side of the jet cabin ceiling. Smoke rolled out in thick black waves. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around. Then he heard coughing inside. Still alive, Ethan covered his mouth with his sleeve and forced himself into the cabin. The inside looked like hell itself. Leather seats burned like torches. Sparks rained from exposed wires overhead. The emergency lights flickered blood-red through the smoke. And trapped beneath a collapsed section of ceiling near the rear cabin was Victor Langston, the billionaire CEO of Langston Aerospace. The man who had fired Ethan publicly. The man who had called him replaceable. Victor looked barely conscious. Blood streamed down his forehead. One leg was pinned beneath twisted metal. His eyes widened when he recognized Ethan through the smoke. "You!" Ethan dropped beside him. "Don't talk." Victor coughed violently. "Why are you here?" A flaming beam crashed nearby. Ethan grabbed the metal pinning Victor's leg and tried lifting it. It didn't move. "Because I'm not you," Ethan growled. Victor stared at him in disbelief as Ethan braced both feet against the floor and pulled again with everything he had. The metal shifted slightly. Pain exploded through Ethan's shoulders. 3 months earlier, Ethan had stood in front of 200 employees while Victor Langston destroyed his reputation in less than 60 seconds. "You failed this company," Victor had said coldly during the meeting. Ethan remembered every face in the room staring at him. The humiliation. The silence. The security guards waiting nearby like he was a criminal. After 12 years working for Langston Aerospace, Ethan had been fired over a failed engine contract that wasn't even his fault. Victor never cared. "Business requires sacrifice," he had told him afterward. Sacrifice. Easy word for billionaires. Harder when you're a widowed single father struggling to feed your daughter. Ethan lost his house 2 weeks later. His savings disappeared after Lily's hospital bills piled up from her asthma treatments. At night he drove for delivery apps while Lily slept in the tiny apartment they barely afforded. And now the same billionaire who ruined them was trapped beneath burning steel. "Leave me," Victor muttered weakly. Ethan ignored him. He planted both hands under the beam again. Every muscle screamed as he lifted with raw desperation. The metal finally rose enough. "Move your leg!" Ethan shouted. Victor dragged himself free with a cry of pain. Then another explosion rocked the jet. The cabin ceiling partially collapsed behind them. Fire surged across the aisle. They had seconds left. Ethan pulled Victor over his shoulder and staggered toward the exit through thick smoke. Halfway there, Victor lost consciousness. Dead weight. Too heavy. Ethan nearly collapsed. The fire climbed the walls around them. The doorway suddenly looked impossibly far away. Outside, firefighters shouted frantically. Then Ethan heard Lily's voice somewhere beyond the chaos. "Daddy!" That single word hit harder than the flames. Ethan forced his legs forward. One step. Then another. His vision blurred from smoke inhalation. His lungs felt shredded apart. The cabin groaned loudly. The jet was dying. And then the floor beneath Ethan cracked. He crashed hard onto one knee as part of the cabin flooring gave way into burning wreckage below. Victor slipped off his shoulder. For one horrifying second, Ethan thought they were both dead. Then he grabbed a seat frame and pulled himself upward. The firestorm behind them exploded hotter. Ethan seized Victor's jacket and dragged him the remaining distance toward the exit. The moment they reached the doorway, firefighters rushed forward. Strong hands grabbed Victor first. Then Ethan lost his grip. The collapsing staircase snapped beneath him. Suddenly he was falling. The crowd screamed. Ethan hit the runway shoulder first, only seconds before the jet erupted in a massive explosion behind him. The blast wave rolled across the tarmac like an earthquake. Fire shot into the night sky. People ran in panic. Ethan barely heard any of it, because a tiny pair of arms wrapped around him. "Daddy!" Lily sobbed against his chest. Ethan held her tightly despite the pain ripping through his body. "You're okay," she cried. He kissed her hair weakly. "So are you." Across the runway, paramedics surrounded Victor Langston. The billionaire stared toward Ethan with an expression nobody had ever seen on his face before. Fear. Shock. And something far worse. Shame. For 3 days, Ethan stayed in the hospital recovering from burns and smoke inhalation. Nobody expected what happened next. News footage of the rescue exploded online overnight. Millions watched the video of Ethan running into the burning jet, while everyone else fled. Headlines called him a hero. But Ethan didn't care about headlines. He cared about overdue rent. He cared about Lily asking if they'd have enough money for groceries next week. That reality returned quickly once he left the hospital. On the 4th morning, Ethan sat at their tiny kitchen table calculating bills while Lily ate cereal quietly nearby. A knock came at the door. Ethan opened it cautiously. 3 black SUVs waited outside the apartment building. Men in suits stood beside them. And in the center was Victor Langston himself. Alive. Walking with a cane. Ethan's expression darkened instantly. "What do you want?" Victor looked uncomfortable for the first time in his life. "I came to thank you. You could have sent a card." Victor glanced around the rundown apartment hallway. Peeling paint. Broken lights. Smell of cheap cigarettes lingering in the air. His jaw tightened slightly. "This is where you live now?" Ethan crossed his arms. "You already took the house, remember?" Victor looked like someone punched him. Inside the apartment, Lily peeked around the doorway nervously. Victor noticed her inhaler sitting on the table. The realization hit him slowly. Everything Ethan lost. Everything his daughter lost. Because of him. "I didn't know," Victor said quietly. Ethan laughed bitterly. "Of course you didn't. Billionaires never do." Victor remained silent for several seconds. Then he said something Ethan never expected to hear. "I was wrong." Ethan blinked. Victor Langston was famous for destroying competitors without remorse. Investors called him ruthless. Employees feared him. Men like Victor never apologized. Yet there he stood looking strangely broken. "I reviewed the old engine contract while recovering," Victor admitted. "The failure wasn't yours. My board manipulated the numbers to protect another executive. I approved your firing without checking." Ethan stared coldly. And I ruined an innocent man's life." Silence filled the hallway. Victor reached into his jacket slowly and handed Ethan an envelope. Inside was a check. Ethan's eyes widened. $5 million. "What is this?" "Compensation," Victor answered. Ethan looked up sharply. "You think money fixes everything?" "No," Victor admitted quietly. "But it's a start." Ethan almost threw the check back at him. Almost. Then he looked toward Lily. Her worn-out shoes. The leaking apartment ceiling. The overdue medical notices on the table. His pride warred against reality. Victor noticed the hesitation. "You saved my life," he said softly. "And I repaid you by taking yours apart months earlier. I can't erase that. But let me fix what I can." Ethan's fists tightened. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." Victor nodded slowly. "I know. You made my daughter homeless." Victor's eyes lowered. "I know. You called me replaceable." Victor swallowed hard. "And you still saved me." The silence between them became heavy. Finally Lily stepped closer carefully. "Daddy?" Ethan looked down. "Didn't Grandpa say heroes help people even if they're mean?" Victor's eyes widened slightly. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. His late wife used to say the same thing. Sometimes goodness felt like a curse. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I'm not forgiving you," he said. "I'm not asking you to." Victor handed him another paper. "This is different." Ethan unfolded it carefully. His eyes narrowed. It was ownership documentation. 30% shares of Langston Aerospace. Ethan looked stunned. Victor spoke calmly. "The board members responsible for framing you are gone. I removed them yesterday. You're giving me ownership? I'm giving you what should have been yours years ago." Ethan stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Victor continued quietly. "The engineer who designed the fuel stabilization system that saved hundreds of flights wasn't me. It was you." Ethan froze. Victor looked directly at him. "I built billions using your ideas while treating you like nothing." For the first time since the crash, Ethan saw genuine regret in the billionaire's eyes. Not public relations regret. Real regret. Victor glanced toward Lily again. "When I was trapped in that fire," he whispered, "I realized something horrifying." Ethan said nothing. Victor's voice became unsteady. "If our positions had been reversed, I don't think I would have gone back for you." That confession hung in the air like a wound. Because they both knew it was true. Victor Langston had spent his entire life worshipping power, money, and control. And the man he considered weak had shown more courage in one moment than Victor had shown in decades. A week later, the world exploded again. Victor Langston held a live press conference broadcast internationally. Reporters expected discussions about the jet crash. Instead, Victor walked onto stage and shocked everyone. "I owe the public the truth," he announced. Then he confessed everything. The wrongful firing. The corruption inside his company. The lies. The greed. And finally, he introduced Ethan Cole as the new co-owner of Langston Aerospace. Reporters erupted into chaos. Cameras flashed wildly. But the biggest shock came last. Victor stepped away from the podium. Then, in front of the entire world, the billionaire bowed his head toward Ethan. A public apology. Real. Raw. Humiliating. The room fell silent. Ethan stood frozen. Victor looked at him and said quietly into the microphone, "The man I called replaceable walked through fire to save my life. The truth is, men like him are irreplaceable." Across the world, millions watched the billionaire's voice break with emotion. But one person mattered more than all of them. Lily. She smiled proudly beside the stage while holding her father's hand. For the first time in months, Ethan finally felt something he thought he had lost forever. Not revenge. Not victory. Peace. But fate wasn't finished yet. 2 months later, Ethan discovered something terrifying. The jet crash hadn't been an accident. The fuel line explosion had been deliberate. Someone had planted an explosive device beneath the aircraft before takeoff. And the deeper Ethan investigated, the more horrifying the truth became. Victor's former board members weren't just corrupt. They wanted Victor dead. Because hidden inside Langston Aerospace was a classified defense contract worth $12 billion. A contract powerful enough to destroy governments. The night Ethan uncovered the evidence, his apartment door exploded inward. Masked men stormed inside. Lily screamed. Ethan grabbed her instantly and ducked as bullets tore through the walls. One attacker shouted, "Take the girl!" Pure rage exploded inside Ethan. Not fear. Rage. The kind only fathers understand. Ethan tackled the first gunman into a glass table. Blood sprayed across the room. Another attacker swung a weapon toward Lily. Big mistake. Ethan smashed a lamp into the man's face with savage force. The apartment descended into violent chaos. Lily cried behind the couch while Ethan fought like a man possessed. Because fathers who have already lost everything become terrifying when someone threatens the one thing they have left. Police sirens finally echoed outside. The attackers fled. But before escaping, one of them left a message burned into Ethan's kitchen wall. Heroes die first. That was the moment Ethan understood. Saving Victor Langston from the burning jet had pulled him into a war far bigger than either of them imagined. And the fire he ran into that night? That was only the beginning.